Greetings and salutations. This is Abdelhadi with The Bitter Truth, where we may not have all the answers, but we're going to ask an awful lot of questions. You can also become a bitter pill or a spoonful of sugar by visiting patreon.com/The Bitter Truth. And we have all kinds of fabulous swag there to make your life better. Today we have somebody in the studio, came up from the city of San Marcos, Texas, Dr. Jocabed Marquez. She was elected in 2018. She's going through some issues right now with the city and a couple of developer type things, and we're going to talk about all kinds of things today. So I'm very excited to have her in the studio. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Hey, not a problem. So when you got elected in 2018?
I did, yes.
And what did you run on?
My platform?
Mm-hmm.
It was criminal justice reform. I also ran on preservation of neighborhoods. I ran on protection of the river. And, of course, not accepting any money from developers, which is usually what happens in local elections. A lot of these city council people accept money. And obviously, when you accept money, you are at the mercy of somebody else's interests.
Mm-hmm.
And I vowed to my constituents that I would never accept any money. And I ran a grassroots campaign and accepted $5 donations even from students at the university. And that's pretty much what I did. And I won in the runoff by 63% of the vote. So that was really cool.
Nice. So what's your PhD in then?
My PhD is in school improvement, which is under education. I do, though, have a bachelor's and a master's degree in chemistry. So I used to do drug synthesis for a while. I used to work in biotech for a while before I transitioned. And I used to be a teacher. So I did all that. And then I transitioned to education. I've taught at the university as well. And I've been a researcher as well. And right now I'm working with 2 grants. National Science Foundation and NASA. So what I do is collect data. I report back on effectiveness of certain grants that are awarded to the university. Mm-hmm. We have a $15 million grant with NASA at the university to try to increase women and minorities in the science, technology, education, and mathematics fields. Engineering, sorry. So that's what I'm trying to do. And that's the type of work that I do to make a living. Okay. And I also serve on the council.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And then the council obviously is like a stipend position. It's not a salary position like Houston or something.
Absolutely. Even Austin is a salary. But no, at San Marcos we have stipends. They help out, and I really appreciate it because, it is a lot of work. So, yeah.
So and I'm going to get into this in some more detail, but now that you're on the city council, you no longer work at Texas State, right?
I work as a contractor.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're allowed to do that?
I'm allowed to do that.
Oh,
right.
okay.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And so are they able to give you a discount on health insurance, or do you still get?
No, I don't have health insurance, Abe.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't have access to health insurance, so I'm kind of surviving on faith and remedies and I guess my indigenous genes. But I don't have access to health care. I used to when I work full time, but now, no, we don't get access to that. And I've been a big advocate for Medicare for All just for that reason, because despite of my advanced degrees and despite of my qualifications, I still don't have access to health insurance, and it's really expensive.
Yeah, no kidding. And is if you were able to have another job that wasn't government related, is that something that would get in the way of being on the city council? Absolutely not.
Oh, okay. No. Because on the city council, we're not able to receive salaries from true government entities, so I wouldn't be able. I would be able to get paid from an entity that is not a state-related entity.
Right, and then you can get their insurance program. Or whatever.
Okay, that's right.
Gotcha. All right. So, when you ran against race and racism.
Yes.
And you wanted to get more women of color in office.
Yes.
Excuse me. And I'm old. I like to say black and brown because when they say women of color, it reminds me of the old days when they used to say colored.
Right.
This water fountain's for colored people only. You can't have this water fountain. So I kind of feel like when we're saying women of color, well, it's almost like the water fountain thing. So I'd rather just say black and brown because it's just, you know what I mean? It's just right. But so how do you find that? Going, I mean, because San Marcos to me always struck me as a cool little college village. Like when I first moved here, I had a couple of clients down there, and I was like, "This is a cool little town." And then it kind of started blowing up last 2-3 years, where they're doing some of the shit we're doing here with mixed use facilities and blah blah blah. Are you finding it tougher, for example, to get more women employment, or what are you trying to do in the city council, and what kind of obstacles are you running into?
So I'm the second Latina to get elected in the city council. The first one is back in the 1980s. I think she was elected in 1984, and since then there hasn't been a Latina representative in the council, and that to me is very problematic. Just because if young girls don't see Latina elected in office, in a position of power, they won't be able to see themselves do that. And you cannot be what you cannot see. Mm-hmm. And representation was always important for me, especially for my daughter, to see me in an elected position and to see me making decisions and to see me advocate on behalf of people. And I feel that often the people on the east side of San Marcos, which is mostly black and brown, historically black and brown, because I-35 was the segregation point, the separation point between the white community and the black and brown communities. And we didn't have anybody in the council who was representative of the people, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be that voice, and I wanted to represent my people in a way that is responsive to their needs and responsive to their socioeconomic status, and not just because of identity politics or race or things like that, but because of representation. And it's difficult in San Marcos right now to find a job, and I'm saying this because I've applied 4 times to get back and work full time that I used to do, not just like contracting. And I haven't been able to find a job. And I do get interviews, but it's just like I just don't get any offers. And I think people are just curious about me, and they're like, oh, we've heard about you, or we know about you. Come in for an interview. Let's find out what you're about. And in the end, they don't really give me a job. And that's problematic because you're supposed to. I've been through a lot of schooling, and you have the expectation that you go through all these years of schooling, and then at the end you're going to have an amazing job and an amazing life and an amazing house, and you're going to fulfill your American dream. When in reality, that's not the case for everybody, especially for people of color and women of color, black and brown women. So I find a lot of issues like that. I even applied in Austin. I applied at TEA, the Texas Education Agency. They gave me an interview, but it didn't work out. So. Yeah, it's just a systemic issue. And as far as what you said about creating jobs, so I'm not against, companies coming to San Marcos, but I do want them to be responsive to the working class in San Marcos. I do want them to provide $15 an hour salary for people. I do want them to provide some sort of health insurance for people. So job creation is important, but of course being responsive to the needs of people.
Let me ask you a question. So, because you mentioned before that there's not been a black or brown person on the city council since 1984.
There has been males.
Males.
Right,
okay,
right.
Okay. And that was my next question then. So has there been any diversity in policy making? I mean, because you don't have to be a person of color or whatever to make policy. You can empathize with, oh shit, we should have a $15 minimum wage, or you know what I mean? It's kind of like, so excuse me, has there been diversity in policy making, or has it pretty much just gone kind of along the lines of, what bribes they're taking or what the developers want?
Yeah, and it all depends. We've had developer councils that are very much pro-development. We've had that in the past. This past year, I feel that we've changed that a bit because we're concerned about homelessness. So we just created a homelessness committee. So we want to address homelessness. We want to address sustainability in our town. We just created a sustainability committee, and we want to create all these programs and social services for people, things that haven't happened in the past that just now we're bringing to council. My fellow council members and I, 2 of them, or the 3 of us, were kind of like, what can we do for our people to be responsive to the people? Obviously, when you live in a certain way and you only get $21,000 a year, you have a different perspective than from someone who's already retired, has a salary, or comes from a lineage of where their parents always had social capital and their parents always had means. It's a different perspective, and your priorities shift once you are in tune with the realities of the realities of everyday people, and that's what we're trying to do. my fellow council members and I is trying to be more responsive to the working class. And if you ask me about diversity of policymaking, I think that when people don't come to the table, when they're not invited to the table, their voices are drowned out, their voices are not heard. And I think that's what's really, really important, to have our voices heard and our ideas and our lived realities represented in policymaking. And that's what we're trying to do. So recently we brought forth a non-discrimination policy to the council, non-discrimination against the LGBTQIA community, which hadn't happened in the past. And I think that we're moving to be more progressive and to be more responsive to the marginalized communities in our town.
So let me ask you about the homeless issue then, because I think a lot of people, and I'm not an expert, but I've interviewed people who know this stuff. So like a little known statistic is that 40% of homeless people actually have jobs, right? And we don't know they're homeless because, they have their faculties together, right? They got enough wherewithal to get a gym membership, sleep in their car, take a shower at the gym, go to work. And you don't know they're homeless because when you go to the hotel or you go to the restaurant, you just see them like normal people working or whatever. And so they have a job. Or if they got a family, they'll share a couple of families in a hotel or motel.
Yes.
Right, until they can get their shit together and get another place to live. But that's not the people that are in the streets generally. Generally, the folks in the streets are, mental issues, or they got, a chemical dependency. They got a drug problem.
Right.
And we see that here in Austin all the time. Especially the last couple of years, the 10 cities have exploded, and these people aren't getting help. I mean, the other day I was getting off the freeway, and this one guy was just in a daze, and he was just kind of walking around, I think, hoping that somebody just give him some money. And he turned around and freaked me out because the back of his neck had an open wound in it. And I could see like 3 of his vertebrae. And it looked like a special effect. It didn't look real. It freaked me out. And then he turns around, I see the look on his face. I got a little weepy, because I was like, God damn it, what the fuck? Why is this guy out here? Like what happened to his back of his neck? Why is his spine exposed, right? And it's like we've marginalized people to the point where they become a punchline and we don't even take it seriously, right? And then, I got assholes that I know either in person or on fucking line nowadays, and they'll say things like, well, we should take him out and kill him. I was like, really? I think the Third Reich said something like that, right? It's like other countries that have had pogroms, and killed gypsies and Jews and Catholics and homeless people or, invalids or whatever. This isn't a new idea. Right, we've done shit like this before, and now it's like we're doing it in slow motion, right? So it's like, what kind of programs are you guys looking at? For example, because when I was a kid, back in the day, 1912, we lived in black and white. God damn it! But when I was a kid, we didn't have a homeless problem. Okay, we had some winos on Skid Row. That was it. By 1984, after Reagan was in for a few years and started, doing all kinds of fabulous things to state hospitals and shit like that, and state hospitals had to cut back their funding and all this crap. Time magazine had a great cover, the new homeless problem in America, which we didn't really have before. Not since the 30s, not since the Depression have we had homeless people in a real way. And what started happening was we started just kicking these people out of state hospitals and whatnot and kicking them out into the street with very little, with a very low bar, right? Like, what's your name? Stanley. Okay, you can go. And meds, no meds, we didn't give a shit. So now here we are 35 years later, and we wonder where this is coming from. And we talk about it like it's new. It's been around for 35, 40 years now, just getting progressively worse. And nobody talks about the elephant in the room, which is, well, if you want to keep spending money on defense and giving tax breaks, and I don't mean tax breaks, I mean zero taxes to corporations who, if you're Walmart and you've got 20 shell companies in Lithuania, we should be going after your ass. But we don't. And so we got these people sleeping on heating grates, and no one seems to give a shit. And I hear people speak in some of the most brutal terms about these folks. And I'm like, I'm not this man of the people out in the street. I just go, I go out. And if I'm walking around downtown or if I'm walking on East 6th or something or down that neighborhood, I see these people and they look at it right in the eye. And they're not well. What are we doing about it, right? Like, what kind of programs are you guys looking at? I know you're just in San Marcos, but in San Marcos, what kind of programs are you guys looking at to, like, put these people somewhere? And by somewhere, I don't mean, some camp or something, but somewhere, not the goddamn Arch Center like we have here, where you got 2 unarmed security guards and people are getting assaulted in the middle of the night, having their shit taken from them just because we give them a cot and 3 squares. And you got some volunteer girl who's running the reception desk who's trying to get her master's in sociology or something, and they make her work at the Arts Center. And she's got nothing but 2 unarmed security guards and 300, not well people. That's it. So the level of care there is non-existent. So why are they in the street? I hear people say, well, they're in the Arts Center. Well, they have the Arts Center. Why don't they just stay there? Have you walked by the Arts Center? It's across the street from this bar I go to called the Barracuda when I go see a band play. Mm-hmm. It's a scary-ass place. It's like a bus station from hell. Everyone is like living on the sidewalk. And look them in the eye. God damn it, they're not well. They're injured, a lot of them. It's like, what kind of programs are you guys looking at for that kind of thing?
Yeah, it's oh my goodness, it's such a complex issue.
Sure,
and
and I don't expect you to answer it all in 2 minutes, but I'm just saying.
Right, and in San Marcos, it's very much a problem because a lot of people have been displaced because of the floods, and because of the floods, we have 2 rivers in San Marcos. We have the San Marcos River and we have the Blanco River. And what happens is that all these developer councils in the past have approved certain developments and apartment complexes that have actually made the problem worse, as far as flooding. And people have been displaced from their homes. People don't have anywhere to go. People have to stay in motels and hotels. And we actually have a panhandling ordinance in San Marcos. So a lot of people are like, well, we don't have any homeless people in San Marcos, but we actually have a huge problem. And you were talking about 40% of people that are homeless are actually employed. And this is true because 2 weeks ago we had our first ever point-in-time count in Hays County that we've never had. And collecting that data is the first step. Because if I go to my city manager and I say, we have this homelessness problem, he's like, well, what's the scope of the problem? How many people are actually homeless? And how many of those people are either veterans or are using drugs? Or how many people actually have jobs? And it becomes very complex. And so we decided, along with Home Center, this is a nonprofit, or not a nonprofit, not yet, but it's in the process of becoming a nonprofit in San Marcos. And we said, how can we start addressing this issue? And the first thing we said was, why don't we hold this point-in-time count? And 60% of the respondents in our point-in-time count actually have jobs. And it's surprising to me that they cannot afford to pay rent, that they've been displaced in the last year because their apartment, the cost of their apartment just went up. And it's crazy to me because that same thing has happened to me, and I'll talk about it later.
Sure.
And it's like, yeah, we have jobs, but we sleep in our cars or we sleep in our truck. And that to me is, oh my goodness, why is it that a person doesn't have access to a place to sleep if they have a job? And it's problematic in so many ways. And yes, there's a huge lack of compassion, and there's a huge lack of empathy, and there's a huge lack of love. And it saddens me because the more time progresses, the less human we become and the less responsive we are to people and the less we care. And certainly our leadership doesn't model that. And
it hasn't for a long time.
It hasn't. And so what we're trying to do is, in San Marcos, we have Southside, which is a community center, but we only have 7 beds. We don't have the capacity to service everybody that needs help. And what we're trying to do is look at a piece of land that the city owns that could possibly be used for some sort of shelter, kind of like they have here in Austin, the Mobile Loaves and Fishes Community First. Mm-hmm. That's what we're trying to do in San Marcos. But we realize that we need all types of partnerships. So we need city funding, we need business partners, we need churches and nonprofits to kind of do this together. And that's what we're trying to do in San Marcos. And I know the movement started, and I think we're progressing in the right direction. And policy plays a huge role because we can have activists, protest about homeless every day, all day. But unless we put it into the policy, unless we make it happen, unless we allocate the funds necessary, that's where we come in as city government. Change won't happen. So
you've been in council a year, right? You sworn in January of last year because you won in 2018.
Yes.
Okay, so obviously San Marcos doesn't run a defense budget, right? No. They you know, obviously they don't have a state department, right? They're just the city, right? So, you know, you got cops and fire, got to have that.
Yes.
You know, Texas State is Texas State. They do their own thing. Obviously, they pay property tax or whatever they do.
They don't.
They don't pay property tax. Ah, well, that's in a kettle of fish. Okay, so this was my question. My question was going to be, because you hear this dipshit thing all the time. Well, how are you going to pay for it? How do you pay for war? We got a $1.2 trillion defense budget. Exactly. The national budget is $1.4 trillion. Right. Had a couple of buddies in from L.A. over the weekend, got in this big debate, and then one friend of mine was like, well, what do you think the average percentage of GDP should be to the benefit of the people? I said, well, since we spend roughly 9% of GDP between the budget and defense is half of our budget, if you're spending 1.2 on defense and 1.4 to budget for the country, that's roughly $3.6 trillion. We have a $21 trillion GDP, which means we're spending over 10% of GDP on the budget. Half of that goes to defense, at least half. Okay? So, excuse me, instead of making these cuts to people who could afford it and going after the middle class to make up the difference, like they're doing in France right now, which is why they're having strikes in France right now for 65 weeks. You got 500,000 people showing up every goddamn weekend and breaking shit, and why not? You're going to give your buddies tax breaks, and then you're going to privatize the ports, privatize the airports, privatize the sewage, privatize the parking. Then you're going to put a 30-cent a liter gas tax. That's $1.50 a gallon. That was the powder keg that went off in France, by the way. And you don't see it in the mainstream press ever. I got to keep going to Al Jazeera or the fucking Intercept to see what's happening in France. Like, you know, the impeachment. Yeah, you know what they're doing in France right now? Oh, you don't want to teach us that? Because we'll get some ideas then, won't we? Because we haven't had strikes since forever. This bullshit with the pussy hat toddlers and the climate denier or the climate marching people. They marched for a fucking day. That was CIA tested, mother approved. You know how I know? No one got their head cracked. No one got their head. Occupy, they got their heads cracked. Dapple, they got their heads cracked. Mm-hmm. But if you're Greta Thunberg and you get on the cover of Time magazine, you know, chop $100 million trees down to make a fucking magazine, that's okay. Knock yourself out. She's fist bumping goddamn Obama because she's too young to remember that he, increased fracking by 88%, fracking and oil drilling by 88%. So she's hanging out with Arnold. He's got a goddamn Hummer, for Christ's sake. It's like, okay, but okay. But she's 16 years old. I don't expect her to know this shit. She was 6 when Obama was president. But she's got these psychotic fucking parents who scare the shit out of her because she's autistic and they're taking advantage of her issue. I mean, she was like making these speeches, right? I digress. To bring it all back down to earth is we have this budget issue that we in the United States can't control. So the city of San Marcos, for example, why isn't Texas State paying property tax?
Oh, yeah. And then it goes back to the state legislature. And it's a battle that we've had for such a long time that all the buildings that they have and the buildings that they acquire, they don't pay any taxes to it. And that becomes so problematic because citizens and senior citizens are cost burdened every single day.
Yep.
And they come to us asking us, why isn't Texas State University paying their fair share, to the city, and that's something that is out of our control. And we wish that we had control over it. We, as a city government, as municipal government, we have no control over it.
Now, is that like Texas A&M? They don't pay taxes in College Station. UT doesn't pay taxes here. Is that how that goes?
I have no idea how other entities operate, but Texas State University, for sure, the regions and their leadership are very conservative. And I don't know if that plays a role into it, but it's been such an ongoing battle between Texas State University and the longtime residents. Pretty much Texas State has swallowed all of the town, and they keep taking land, and they play a huge role in gentrifying our city.
Without paying property tax.
Without paying property tax. They use our fire, they use our police without paying their fair share of taxes. And to me, that is so problematic in many ways.
It's wrong.
It is wrong.
It's not even problematic. That's a nice word. It's fucking wrong.
It's wrong in so many ways. And they prey on students. They prey on first-generation students, meaning that 50% of the students at Texas State University, their parents have never been to college. And they come to San Marcos, and they find a place to stay, a place to live, and they get funneled into these very predatory rent-by-the-bed type of housing. And it's all interconnected, and it's all related into a very predatory university and housing system. And we as a council
are very frustrated because we have no control over it. And we wish that we can do something, and we wish that we could help people, and we wish that we could take that revenue and use it for social services, and take that revenue and use it to fix our streets and to repair and to provide more ADA accommodations and to provide bike lanes. But our hands are tied.
Because right now the only property tax y'all get is just private citizen homes, like a little commercial building guy.
That's right.
He pays his 2% a year, whatever it is, and that's it.
Right.
For a city, roughly how big? How big is this? About 200,000 now?
Or 64,000.
64,000.
Right.
Okay. Okay. And but you all have property down there. There's commerce down there. It's a business. There's business down there. I mean, I've been down there quite a few times since I lived here, and it's not a 64,000 is a small town compared to anything in Los Angeles, but it's not a small town for Texas, and especially you guys have means, right? But like when they say how can you afford it, well, paying zero tax, like I'm 1099. My day job is 1099. I'm a contractor like you.
Yes, 1099.
And so I pay probably 6 to 8% every year. I write everything off, right? But I pay it, right? I don't get out of it.
Right.
If Amazon paid 8%, which they don't, or if IBM or Google paid 8%, which they don't, if Texas State paid the property tax, I don't know what their state tax issues are or whatever, because it's or what they pay to the feds or because they're an incorporation, 503(c)(b), whatever they are. But as far as property tax goes, they're not even coming close to paying their fair share compared to the guy that owns a little shopping mall, or the guy that owns a brewery or the guy that owns a house. They're paying 1.9 to 2.9% every year, like clockwork. And these guys don't pay it?
Exactly.
That's bullshit.
Exactly.
That's bullshit. And this is the thing when people give me this crap about your bootstraps.
Exactly.
That speech drives me fucking bananas because I get like...
Meritocracy.
Absolutely.
That's what it is.
You should read the book Listen Liberal by a guy named Thomas Frank. Came out about 5 years ago now. And he basically describes the death of the liberal class and how it got taken over. And Chris Hedges wrote a book about 10 years ago called The Death of the Liberal Class. I tell everybody to read this because it's how the so-called left ended up getting completely co-opted to now they're just sort of this – they pay this lip service to some sort of a conscience, but they're never going to do anything about it, right? Like like back in – like Nixon – and I'm going to – bear with me for a second – was probably the last great liberal president we had in this country. And people laugh when I say that. But what he passed wasn't because he was this great-grandfatherly guy. He passed Title IX. He signed Title IX. He signed the EPA. He signed the Cancer Act. I mean, he made cars safer. And it wasn't because he was this, well, the people need the safer cars. It was because Ralph Nader was part of an active left, and every other month fucking Nader is on TV in the Congress beating up Chrysler, beating up Ford. You need seatbelts, you need safety glass, you need and the environment sucks. And he was on every news station. Well, they marginalized guys like him. Noam Chomsky could barely get on Democracy Now!, right? It's not anymore. So you've killed the university because it's now glorified trade tech. I went to school for $100 a quarter. Yeah. People look at me like I'm from Mars when I say that. And guys my age like to forget that. The conservatives my age love to forget that.
How old are you?
I'm 56. And the guys, well, you want a free college? You want a pony? Where'd you go to school? If they're about my age, I went to UT or I went to Cal Poly, but whatever. Like, okay, great. How much? Remember? Oh shit, it was like $300 a semester. It's $6,000 a semester to go to Texas State now.
That's right.
So what kind of electives are you going to take to sound remotely interesting at a party, or to at least sound human? Right? Are you taking philosophy? You taking sociology just cause? You got an elective. Remember? Well, I'm older than you, but back in the day, in the Stone Age, they used to give this little syllabus, this curriculum thing, and you had this whole section of electives that you had to have some. You're like, but it was $100 a quarter, all you can eat, so it didn't matter. So I'm like, oh shit, I don't know, I'll take marriage and family. The fuck, it's 2 units. It satisfies that, and I get in there and I learn a couple of things. God forbid, or I had a philosophy class, and. You always have some jarhead who sits in the class. Is this going to be on the test? You have that guy. You can't help that guy, right? But now that those classes are done, it's all STEM.
That's right.
And I got a buddy who's just putting his kid through school. God bless him, he's rich. He could do it. He wasn't rich when we were playing in a band together back in the day, but he got rich. But his kid's school is $38,000 a semester.
Wow.
Semester.
Where does he go?
Babson, out in Massachusetts, in some big fancy pants business school, which is fine. But is he going to take, like, philosophy? He might. He's a bright kid. He might, I I don't know what he gets for 38 grand, but private schools back in the day weren't 80 grand a year. State schools were running $300 a year. I remember my cousin went to UCLA for free in the 70s. Wow. And anyone in my family will tell you, he didn't go for free because he was special. Well, actually, he was kind of special, but not that's why he went to US for free. It's because it was free. He went to the undergrad for free, $5 a quarter. His books were more expensive. He went to law school for $5 a quarter. You could go to medical school if you could get in the 70s at the UC system in California for free. Nice. Out here it was a little more expensive. I think out here, because y'all didn't have state income tax, I think it was like $20, to go to UT medical school, for a semester was like $20 back in the 70s. And then it went to $300 for guys my age, which is still free. You're paying a service charge. I didn't have any student loans in my undergrad. It wasn't until I went to grad school that I got some student loans. So it's just like, this is not like I'm asking for a pony. We used to do this until we made it a racket and we let the banking come in. One of my friends the other day was saying, I've never seen government make anything good. I'm like, okay, really? I've never seen business make anything good. They privatized college, so that became a racket. They privatized the prisons. That became a fucking racket. We went from 300,000 prisoners in 1980 to 3 million now, half of whom are there for nonviolent, non-trafficking drug offenses. That's right. Mm-hmm. And you talk to goddamn Kamala Harris, who's never met a prisoner she didn't like to fight fires for $1 an hour. That's what she did. We have state prisoners in California. 40% of the firefighters in California, the state firefighters that were putting out all those crazy fires, 40% of them were state prisoners with no insurance, no benefits, no death benefit. They got $1 an hour. And then they got out of prison, and guess what they couldn't do? After they've been trained, they could EMT and fires and everything else, and they were trained, and they couldn't get a job because they had a felony. That's right. Right? If that's not a bullshit system, I don't know what is. And it's not like I want a fucking pony. Like you said, love, you said a second ago. Right. Right? It drives me fucking crazy. This is why when I was asking you about the budget, so let's throw Texas State out of there. They're assholes. Where else can you guys get the money? And laugh if you want to. It's true.
It's true.
They're fucking assholes. I mean, but like where else can y'all get the money, for example, to come up with a clinic where people with a drug dependency or chemical issues, or they're just they're done. They're just done. I swear to God, get out of your car, walk on a sidewalk. You don't have to even talk to these people. Just look at them in the eye, and see where they're at, man. They're done. You can't exterminate them. Right. We got to put them somewhere. Let them at least have a nice end somewhere, right? And then the people that are not crazy, that are living in their car and they're keeping it together barely, why not give them $15 an hour? Now, here's the challenge with that. Seattle and New York both had a mandatory $15 an hour. A couple years in, the studies aren't good. The results aren't good. Some shops are closing up. People getting their hours cut. I got an idea, and I don't know if y'all could do this in Texas or San Marcos, but this is an idea that I batted around with a libertarian guy a few months ago. Why not have whatever y'all's budget office is, that certain businesses with a certain number of lives or a certain income can apply for a subsidy to pay $15 an hour, right? So like say the little bar, like we're at that brewery for y'all and Siema Hernandez and that other cat running. Right. And that bar, like, okay, so now they got to jack it up to $15 an hour. They might not be able to swing that. They could do 9, but they can't do 15. Right. So couldn't there be like a contingency fund for that brewery, either as a tax break or, like a thing, to kick in the $6 an hour? So that way they don't have to cut anyone's hours and they don't have to close up shop and everyone, right? Is there something like that y'all have in the budget that you can play with?
So our Chapter 380 agreements for bigger companies, meaning like Amazon that came to San Marcos, Best Buy, Catera that's coming to San Marcos. So these companies obviously have a bigger budget than smaller businesses. So in our contracts with them, we say, well, if you want any type of reimbursements from the city, if you want any type of, like what you said, subsidies or any type of rebates, we expect you to have $15 an hour. And we're actually pushing for $18 an hour for newer companies that are coming in. But of course, that's for the Cateras, that's for the Amazons. It's not for any of these like Aquabrew or any other, because places like that, obviously that they pay property taxes and obviously their budget is a lot smaller. So yeah, this only applies to the Amazon. And I mean, it's worked out pretty well. But yet again,
Amazon has really horrible conditions for people.
They sure do.
And we find that over and over. They have a lot of turnover. There's people getting sick. There's, the EMTs are in and out of Amazon. On fire, our firefighters are there on a daily basis just because it's just such a hostile working environment.
And they didn't barely put AC units until the summer.
Exactly.
And it's cheaper to keep an EMT outside in case someone heat strokes than it is to have my air conditioning. Like,
It's horrific.
dude, this is like, I'm telling you, this is Upton Sinclair type shit. This is the jungle. You know what I mean? It's like, and this is why I was asking about the budget. So like, what obviously with Amazon, y'all made a deal with those guys.
Right.
So they don't even pay property tax, do they? Because we don't have a state tax here in Texas. So they pay no property tax. Basically, the only city revenue y'all have is property tax, right? So what can the city, I mean, obviously you can't override. Can you override the state? Can you make a city law? Because in California, some of the cities will make these laws that aren't even the state law. But like if you go to Santa Monica, it's like this. If you go to Pasadena, it's like this. We got anything like that here? Can we do anything like that here? Can you tell Texas State go fuck themselves and like, I don't, maybe you should move your college?
Right. And it has to be done at the state legislature. And the question is who's willing to advocate for San Marcos and who's willing to advocate for the people on behalf of the people and not on behalf of the university and their interests and what they want. And, it's just such a predatory system. And sometimes, fellow council members tell me, oh, let's not upset Texas State because we're in the process of working with them on a certain project. And I'm just like, upset Texas State? You don't want me to upset Texas State or to say things about Texas State? I went to Texas State. I gave them $25,000 to get a PhD at Texas State. So I have every right to denounce and to be critical of Texas State. I have a right as a citizen of San Marcos, as a council person, and as an alumni of Texas State. I have a right to question where the money goes and what the resources are utilized for. And it's certainly not to service students. And I don't know where the resources are going because obviously they're not coming to San Marcos. So where are the resources going? Where is all this money that they're making? Where is it all going? And it's just this huge battle with the university and their part in gentrifying San Marcos and their part in, and not servicing Texas State University is a Hispanic serving institution. Some of these universities have designation, minority serving institution, for example, HSIs, for example, historically black colleges and universities, HBCUs, or tribal colleges. So Texas State receives 40%, receives an annual, they receive an annual amount of $700,000 for being an HSI, for being a Hispanic serving institution, meaning that they enroll 40% or more of Hispanic students. So they do receive.
They get it from where?
They get it from the federal government.
Okay.
Yeah, they get it from the federal government just because of that designation, and they use that for buildings, and they use that for this, and they use that for that, and they don't service they don't service Hispanic students. We are.
You still pay $25,000. Where is this?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I still pay $25,000 to go to school there, and I'm not going to UT or an Ivy League. It's Texas State. It's a state school.
Well, UT's a state school, goddamn. That's my point. Is like, what's the difference in UT Austin and UT Dallas? You know what I'm saying? Like, UT Austin is more than UT RGV.
That's right.
UT Rio Grande Valley is less than UT Austin.
Right, because UT Austin is an R1. It's a Research 1 institution.
Is that what it is?
Yes.
Because in California, we had a UC system and the Cal State system, right? And UCLA, which I'm sure you've heard of, does not charge any more money than UC Santa Cruz, which I'm sure you haven't heard of. It's
I love it.
So if you're going to pay $6,000 a quarter at UCLA, you're paying $6,000 a quarter at Santa Cruz.
I love it.
If you go to UC Riverside, you're paying $6,000. Back in the day when I was in college, my girlfriend went to UCLA, and Cal State was cheaper. So when I was paying $100 a quarter, she was paying, wait for it, $225.
Wow.
Ooh, that's so expensive, It was like, because I was like 19. Wow, that's a lot of money. Like, because, but you didn't think about it. My dad wasn't rich. He didn't pay my bills, he didn't pay my rent. But, I'll pay for school because it was $100.
Right.
It's a fucking $100. He paid for my school and books every quarter. So every 3 months he gave me like $300. So it was like I can't afford to put my kids through school. My dad did because back in the day, and we grew up in South Central. It wasn't like we had this money. You know what I mean? Like he was just a regular working stiff guy. Like Fayuca. He used to sell he's strokes and shit, but he used to sell dry goods to farm workers in California. That's how he got off the boat from the Middle East and Brazil. He went door to door. He was slugging around L.A. for about 5-6 years, and finally knocks on this one lady's door, Mexican lady. She's like, he spoke a little Spanish already, and she's like, "What the fuck are you doing this door to door thing for, man? My cousin works on the farms. You should go sell to those guys." So he loaded up his car, started going to Hammett, and then he'd be gone all summer. He'd make a ton of money. Because he would just take dry goods and cassettes and ghetto blasters and cowboy hats and shit and just go to these farms. And guys just got their paycheck. He would be gone like a swap meet Thursday through Sunday. That's what my dad did. And he put 4 kids through school and he, because it wasn't a lot of money back then. Right. Back then you could buy a house for $30,000. And the minimum wage was $110 and a union worker was making $7 an hour. Then they could afford to put their kids through school and go on vacation and keep their wife at home because guess what? It was like $90 a month to pay rent. That's how it was when I was little. Like not even little, 12, 13, 15 years old.
I love it.
Right? And so now with inflation, I understand that. But it seems like we've gotten rid of that social contract, man. Like, and everything you're talking about is about a social contract. Love is not the filter anymore.
Exactly.
But love is not the filter anymore. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, if your mantra is fuck the other guy, well then fuck you. I don't want to hear about it.
That's right.
And that's what drives me crazy. I mean, you pay $25,000, and it's like, and this is another thing too. When people sit there and they go, well, who cares? If she's Latinx or whatever, why should she get money for? Okay, Eisenhower actually said this, which is hilarious. Not hilarious, but it's hilarious that he would say this. Well, Eisenhower wasn't that big a dick except for covert operations like in Nicaragua and Guatemala. But let's not split hairs. This one thing was really good. This is why everybody hates me. Bless your heart. But when Brown versus Topeka Board of Education went down,
1954. Yes.
And everyone was like, okay, well, they finally got theirs, kind of thing. And Eisenhower's like, yeah, you know what, man? He didn't say it like this. He wasn't stoned. He just said, hey. But he was like, you can't expect the people that have been shackled for 400 years to get up to the starting line with people who have never had, shackles, never been opportunity, right? Never had opportunity denied them. You can't put them on the starting line today and expect them to just, you're gonna have to expect to do some things to kind of give them a boost a little bit, right? It's like Haiti got their liberation from France. I think it was around 1801, and for 100 years, because Haiti got their freedom, they had to pay France reparations for 100 years because of the money France lost from slavery. You know what they paid of GDP? 80% of their GDP went to France. Wow. Now, could you imagine if the United States paid 80% of its GDP for the first 100 years to England? Because England's like, whoa, we're not getting tobacco and cotton anymore. You owe us 80% of your money for the first 100 years because you got your freedom, right? That would never have flown with a bunch of white guys, right? But Europe did it to Haiti. And the world community at that time, probably today even, they were like, well, fuck it. They're a bunch of black guys. Fuck it. They're free now. In 100 years, they'll be cool. And we wonder why Haiti's so goddamn broke all the time. Because they've been paying 80% of their GDP for the first 100 years of their freedom. This is the American exceptionalism. We like to forget what we do.
That's right.
And James Baldwin had the best quote about this. The challenge with the American psychosis is that we don't reconcile our ideals with our sins. Or a better joke, as Chris Rock says, America is like that uncle who put you through college, but he molested you. So, it works better in a not mixed company. But seriously, it's just like we just keep doing this shit and we wonder why we keep getting the same result, right?
Exactly.
So, good.
And it all goes back to colonization. You talked about it. It all goes back to genocide, and it all goes back to historically who has had the power and who hasn't, whose lands were taken away, and who was raped, and who, and we talk about generational trauma a lot in indigenous communities, like my community. Generational trauma just gets passed down, and it's things that we can't forget, and it plays into so many things. And because of colonization, we lost our land, and because of once you lose your land, you lose your wealth, you lose your identity, you lose your language, you lose everything. And things are the way they are now because of what happened 500 years ago with colonization and slavery. And nobody really wants to talk about it. And nobody really wants to actively undo. And I always talked about systems of oppression. Nobody actively wants to undo a system of oppression. And, they're like, oh, slavery. Oh, yeah, it happened so long ago. But we're still feeling the effects of it. And we're still feeling the effects of colonization now. And I always talk about undoing systems of oppression. And that's what I'm all about. And that's what I'm trying to do in the community of San Marcos.
See, you make a good point, though. And this is something I want to move on to some other stuff because we only got a few minutes left. But this is the one point you make that's really key here. When people say this is an incremental centrist, Democrats piss me off, too. Because they'll say this shit like, well, you got to take a little bite at a time. My favorite example, and I've been saying this for fucking years, Lincoln freed the slaves in 1863, and we've been hanging black guys till 1970s.
That's right.
So you want to talk about incremental? We didn't give them voting rights until 1965.
That's
so
right.
for 100 years, they were, quote, free, and we came up with a bunch of other shit. And not just black people, Chinese and everything else, right? And so
Mexicans used to pay a poll tax.
100%.
Right.
Mexicans pay a poll tax. The Chinese paid a poll tax in San Francisco. The Chinese food restaurant, why it got started in San Francisco the way it did was because they couldn't run a business that wasn't food for like 50 years until like the 1930s. Yeah. So the only business they could do were Chinese restaurants. Right, and I'm getting the facts kind of wrong, but it was just a racist fucking thing.
That's right.
And people don't like to admit that we didn't even have free elections till 1828. The president, that was it. And if you were a white guy without property, you couldn't vote either. Right? If you were rich one year but poor the next, fuck you. Blacks, Chinese, Indians, women, nobody could vote. We didn't start having real elections till 1828. When Andrew Jackson ran. Back in the day, it was the president won. He appointed his buddies to be governor, and then they appointed their buddies to the state assembly, and then on down to the city municipal governments. It was all appointed. We didn't start having free elections until 1828. So for the first 50 years of this country, it was just rich white guys, period. Nobody was voting for anything. And then they started opening it up. No, we could vote for governor. No, we could vote for senator. No, we could vote for Congress, right? So all that to say, it gets, I want to get into this next topic really fast with you, but all that to say, it's like we keep pretending like this shit doesn't exist.
Exactly.
And we keep pretending it's like I've been up and down in my life, right? I've made a lot of money. I've not made a lot of money. I've been where I'm banking, and then I've been where I'm like I need a big gulp, and I got to scrape the change out of the floor of my car to find big gulp money, right? So I've been up and down. So I can empathize because I've been up and down, right? Some people never been down.
That's right.
They were lucky. They got a fucking break. They never broke both their legs and got leukemia, right? This whole bootstrap shit pisses me off to no end because I'm just like, we didn't come up rich. In fact, my dad was an asshole. But it could have been worse. When you got four brothers get together for dinner and they go, well, at least he didn't fuck us in the ass. Yeah, there you go. At least he didn't do that. So we got that going for us, as much as bad as it was. But he believed in food on the table and all that other shit while he's beating the shit out of you with the other hand. It is what it is. However, would we have turned out the way we did? I got two brothers that are doctors, right? Would we have turned out the way we did? I don't know. So is that a break? Probably, compared to the guy that just lets you get away with murder and then you end up, drunk and hitting somebody. That's another form of bad luck, right? So all that to say, we keep doing this like blinders on purpose and pretending like if I'm a white guy, I don't benefit from a system that enslaved a group of people for like 300 to 400 years, and we got a bunch of free shit. And oh, by the way, until I go to the airport, I never really realize that I'm not a white guy. They see my name at the airport, then I get the shit, right? I got a 1/16th idea of what it's like to be a black guy in this country. At the airport. That's it. Otherwise, I'm cool. I just drive around, la, la, la. They don't see freckles. They don't care, right? But the question I was asking is, everything you're talking about gets into this development issue. I want to get into this, quote, ethics complaint with this developer guy because, come on. It's like Hamlet. It's like we don't talk about this. It's like doing Hamlet without Hamlet. So let's talk about this dickhead. And I just run a podcast, so, he can't, sue me. Or he can, but he's a dickhead. I saw him interviewed. He's a dickhead. So, okay, so you got this ethics complaint, this developer guy. I read your tweet.
Yeah.
That he freaked out about. So how is this? An ethics complaint to me is like money, like you're taking bribes,
right?
Or you're turning tricks with the mayor or something. That's like an ethics violation,
That's
right?
Right.
Or like you're sleeping with 8th graders. That's like an ethics violation.
Oh gosh.
Like how is you expressing an opinion other than? And by the way, I read your tweet.
Okay.
You know what your problem was in that tweet? Honest to God. This is the only thing that got you in hot water. If you didn't say he's a white guy,
All right.
if you just said, we don't need these developer guys from L.A. and New York coming in with their big fancy pants ideas, not understanding the people, you'd have gotten away with it, all right? But you said, oh, these white guys. He's like, well, I'm sensitive. And now he's Donald Trump. He's clutching his pearls, right? And he's like, I feel triggered. I feel triggered, right? It's like, I remember when I read your thing, she got in hot water, and I read the article, and I was like, oh, fuck, well, I'll go read the tweet. I thought, you're going to call him a Klansman or something. And it's just like, she described him. He's a tall white guy. Maybe he had a blue blazer on when he showed up that day. Fuck, who knows? It was just like, I'm wearing a green sweatshirt. It's like, he's a white guy with a green sweatshirt. I'm triggered right now. It's like, so, like, that's the only thing that got you in trouble. Next time, because you're learning, this is your first office, just don't say race shit. Just, like, leave it alone. Call him a dickhead. You'd get away with calling him a dickhead before you could say he's a white guy. That's what a bunch of pussies we are. Seriously. If you said, dickhead developer from L.A., I'm sure most of his friends would agree he's a dickhead. If you took him to court, Your Honor, I swear on the Bible, yes, and yes, he is a dickhead, absolutely. And so let's talk about this ethics bullshit. So they're saying it's an ethics complaint. Why?
That's so funny. You're right. If I would have, people just get so triggered about race because race is such a construct. They get so triggered. You're right. If I would have said just tall and male and wear blue blazer, there wouldn't have been a problem.
Or if you just would have called him a dickhead from LA. But you don't cuss, do you?
I don't. I try not to.
You try not to. You're a good person. I'm an asshole. But if you left out the race part, if you just said these fancy developers from LA and New York, Chicago, they think they have these big ideas, I don't think you would have had a problem. Because even the city council would have been like, yeah, and you are a developer from LA and New York, and we don't like your ideas.
That night I was really frustrated with the same thing over and over. I was very frustrated with the system that, of course, they gentrify our town and they take advantage of people and they displace people of color and they disproportionately affect citizens of low socioeconomic status and, of course, people of color. And that night I was frustrated. And in order for something to pass on council, it needs a majority vote, which is 4 of us need to vote on it. And that night I had voted against it just because, I wasn't targeting a specific person. I wasn't targeting a specific individual. I just made a comment about, the stereotypical person that comes before us on council and tries to bring us these developments, and they all have the same type of look. And obviously, that triggered a lot of people.
Was he the most recent person? Is that why he freaked out?
No, actually, this person isn't a developer. He just works in the, I think in the real estate in our town. So he's the one that complained about the tweet and got really offended.
Oh, so he's not even like a developer that came for the council for some big-time projects?
No. He's
just a dick. Okay, see that? And it's okay for you to say that, but you won't because you have a PhD, you're all fancy and educated and everything. It's like, seriously, it's like, okay, so what is his ethics charge against you besides this description? What is his ethic? What ethics are you violating? It's like I don't like Trump, for example, right? I can't stand Trump. But when they say treason, I'm like, do you really know what treason is? I don't think this word means what you think it means. It's not treason. Even if he did hang out with Putin and got the election, it's not treason. Treason means we have to be at war, and you have to give the enemy safe quarter, or you're selling secrets, you're doing something with the enemy during wartime. That's treason. Just because Madam Headinjury didn't win the senior prom queen doesn't mean he committed treason. It means you picked the wrong chick and not the guy who could have beat or Agent Orange. You picked the most hated person in the history of the oldest party in this country. And that's saying something because the oldest party in this country used to hang black people all the time. And so she lost to the game show host. That's how shitty they are. So with this knothead, he's not even... So what ethics violations are you violating? What ethics thing... Why is it an ethics complaint is what I don't get.
And you nailed it because you're right. I haven't taken money. I haven't accepted bribes. those are offenses that are on the ethics code.
Right.
What he's citing is a portion of the preamble to the code.
Okay.
So he's not citing anything that I did that violates any of these codes.
Okay.
And it's my freedom of speech. So I don't know what his argument is.
Well, that's my next question. I've never held elected office. So does the preamble say I just can't say people are dicks? I mean, what's the preamble say?
Preamble pretty much says that a council person should conduct themselves in an orderly and ethical manner. That's all that says.
Well, the ethical part means you're not taking bribes or doing crimes.
Exactly. Exactly. You nailed it. So I'm not doing any of that. I'm just expressing a point of view,
Right.
and I'm just denouncing a system of, whiteness, and I'm denouncing a system that has preyed on our town for the longest time. And that's what I did as a council person. And I say this over and over on social media. I wasn't elected to say silent and docile and the typical stereotypical Latina that says silent. I wasn't elected to do that.
Right.
And I was elected to be that voice for the people and to be passionate and to have these passionate rants and to care and to love my people. I wasn't elected to say silent and docile and complicit about injustice. And, to make the developers happy. No, that's not what I was elected to do. And if this tweet is very offensive, and kids at the border being separated from their parents,
Not offensive.
That's not offensive.
Not offensive.
And are people not finding jobs? Oh, that's not offensive. And the homeless people on the street? Oh, well, that's not offensive. Oh, but my tweet pointing out a system is offensive? I don't
That's white
understand
privilege,
it.
man. That's white privilege. It's white
The
privilege.
epitome of white privilege.
It's white privilege. And it's part of the American exceptionalism we suffer from. Like, I've been saying this online a lot because I made it up and it was fun. But John Wayne was an asshole and Red Dawn is not a documentary. Okay? So when people love to say, oh my God, like this shit with the Iowa. Fucking, I saw some asshole blaming Russia. I'm like, dude, really? The fact that Pete Buttigieg did not put $42,000 into this fucking company and that they're run by ex-Hillary people, including Robbie Mook, who with John Podesta and Hillary Clinton came up with Russiagate the day after her Valium wore off in 2016. If you remember, she didn't make her goddamn concession speech till 3 p.m. Tells you who she is as a person. Usually the loser, my lifetime anyway, they make it that night. That morning, 3 a.m, 2 a.m, when they find out it's over, they come out, hey man, great race, thank you. We lost, but hey, America, right? Thumbs up. And then they go back home and drink some more, right? I lost, fuck it. Now grow a beard, hang out like Al Gore, right? Let's say, well, fuck, I got fucked, well, whatever. But not her. She was throwing shit in her fucking hotel room. And, and this is detailed, like Nixon praying with Henry Kissinger the night before he resigned. Okay, I'm talking like that kind of detail. And then she couldn't give her speech because they didn't even write one. That's how arrogant they were. They were so sure they won, right? And she won the popular vote. And there were bitches about the Electoral College. Yeah, but if you're running a campaign, I don't know, that electoral thing, had it for 200 years. Every year, every 4 years, we have this electoral thing. Every campaign that wins plans on it. Obama planned on it, right? Clinton planned on it. Bush 1 planned on it. Reagan planned on it. Well, we got to get the electoral thing. Can't just win the popular. Got to get it all, right? And Clinton just didn't visit the states. I don't know what it is about not wanting to talk about failed policies in the states they failed in that made you want to avoid those states. Bush and Obama fucked those people. That's why Trump took those states. And he was preaching hope and changey. That's what wins, not status quo. Not Medicare for all will never come to pass. That's not a bumper sticker, right? And these people get so goddamn entitled. That's what makes me so fucking nuts about this shit. It's like, think about this. I saw this study about 6 months ago. Kennedy School of Government at Harvard put out this study. You know what's going to shock you? Seriously, because everyone looks at me like I'm smoking crack. If Donald Trump in the 2016 election, and even though he's ham-fisted and he's a toddler and he's an idiot, he spoke on policy 5-1 over Hillary Clinton. Wow. He spoke on jobs. He spoke on ending the wars. I mean, he's full of shit, but he spoke on it. She's saying, no, everything's great. We've always been great. We don't need to make it great again. We've always been great, said the woman that charged into Libya and destroyed a fucking functioning country. And we have slavery there now. Awesome. Good times. Oh, my God. We're selling Yemeni slaves for $200. But the Libyans are not the Libyans. It's a failed state. They're selling slaves for $200 a pop right now. People that escaped from Yemen because we're letting the Saudis bomb Yemen. We have not brought joy to this world, man. We are not a force of good for this world. We are not. In the last few countries that we actually helped after World War II, we did it for commercial reasons. Japan, Europe, Marshall Plan was a great idea. In fact, the Marshall Plan, this is when people, when they tell me, well, you can't have Medicare for all. The first thing we fucking told England after the war? Free college, Medicare for all. Because these people need to get to work and they need to get something. Because you're going to be taxing the shit out of them for a while because you guys had been bombed for 7 years, right? We ignore our own advice. We said the same thing to Germany, said the same thing to Italy, said the same thing to France, said the same thing to Japan. And okay, that's a good idea. We'll do that. Right? I got a buddy's girlfriend, I haven't talked to her in years. She went to Oxford and Cambridge for free. Got her PhD in psychology for free. Came here, she's a shrink. She teaches at Cal State LA now.
Nice.
It's because that's what England does. It's just goddamn common. And somebody asked me the other day, well, what do you want, a welfare state? I was like, well, I expect more bang for my buck for my tax dollar. How about that? How about we don't bomb black and brown countries and take their shit for free and make their people work for 15 cents a day, no bathroom breaks? How about we help these people? And then they'll like us. How about we become the water country? We give water to everybody. It takes $50 billion a year to feed the world's homeless. Way cheaper than bombing them. And we wouldn't have refugees, and we wouldn't have people that want to blow us up. That's right. I mean, terrorists don't come out of the sky. You're an engineer. You're hanging out in Syria or Lebanon, wherever. And one day you come home, and your family's spread out on the sidewalk because they got bombed. If you weren't a terrorist before, you can be a terrorist now. And with good reason. Who could blame them? Nobody ever wants to look at that perspective. Well, they just don't like our freedoms. You fucking twats. I mean, anyway, You're so polite and you're so sweet, and you're very nice, and you don't cuss, and I like that.
My dad was a pastor.
Well, there you go.
Or is a pastor. So he's always censoring my speech.
I told you I don't edit, so if he listens to this show, too bad. It's just this hour's fresh, man. This is what we do. Freshly toasted. This is what we do. But well, listen, we're out of time. Is there so real quick? When's your hearing?
April 8th.
April 8th, and then is there a site that people can go to to throw kudos your way or something like that?
Yes, absolutely. So everyone's invited. San Marcos City Council, April 8th, 6 p.m. And they can prepare just a little speech on my behalf. I would really appreciate it.
Can they do anything online? Is there a website?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean,
give me the site and I'll put it. Well, give me the site and I'll put it in the body.
I don't know, but
That's
they
okay.
can certainly write letters to the Ethics Commission. Supporting me, or even to the mayor and other council members, a council members group at sanmarcostx.gov, so they can write a letter on my behalf.
Do me a favor. We're gonna wrap up, but send me the link and I'll put it in the body of the show.
Okay,
and that way when
awesome.
people see it, they'll be able.
Nice. Oh, I like that. Thank you.
No, thank you for coming in. I know the drive. We had snow today, so
Yes.
it was hard. It was a hard snow day in Texas. But, well, folks, listen, my guest has been Dr. Jocabed Marquez, and I hope you've enjoyed the hour. Again, you can visit us on patreon.com/The Bitter Truth, and you could become a bitter pill or a spoonful of sugar and support the show. And again, guys, if this stuff makes you uncomfortable, it's supposed to. Sleep tight.